Welcome in. Get comfortable. We are incredibly glad you're here with us today for this custom-tailored deep dive.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
You already know we love putting these together for you, taking a massive stack of sources and, distilling them down into the really good stuff.
Right.
But looking at the stack in front of us today, I gotta say, this is one of the most wildly diverse collections of material we've ever tackled.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it spans just an enormous spectrum of human thought.
It really does.
We're starting with hard, multi-billion-dollar NASA science, specifically mission briefs, astronomical data, planetary physics.
And then it just takes a total left turn.
It does. From there, the materials plunge into ancient Roman mythology, Greek archetypes, and the astrological concept of the Saturn Return.
Right, which is heavy enough on its own.
Yeah, but to cap it all off, the stack takes us deep into the trenches of highly complex, esoteric internet lore.
It's a lot. But our mission today is to unpack the multifaceted identity of the sixth planet, Saturn, alongside the archetype of Prometheus. We want to explore how this single celestial body exists simultaneously as a profound scientific marvel, a psychological milestone, and in some corners of the internet, a symbol of a cosmic conspiracy.
It's going to be a wild ride.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the tangible, physical reality of the Cassini-Huygens mission.
The science side of things.
Right. We know Cassini spent 13 years orbiting Saturn, but the way the mission ended in 2017, the grand finale, is just fascinating to me.
It really was a spectacular end.
Why was a deliberate, suicidal plunge into the planet's atmosphere the only option there?
So planetary protection was the driving factor. The spacecraft was running out of the rocket propellant used to adjust its course.
Right. The fuel was basically gone.
Exactly. If mission control had simply left it drifting in orbit, they would have eventually lost all control over its trajectory.
And that's bad because it could hit something.
Right. That introduced a small but mathematically unacceptable risk that Cassini might eventually crash into one of Saturn's moons. By deliberately steering the probe into Saturn's crushing atmosphere, they ensured it would completely burn up.
So it was vaporizing any lingering Earth microbes that might still be carrying?
Yes, precisely. They had to sterilize it by destruction.
So they were actively protecting the moons from us.
They were.
What exactly did Cassini find out there that made those environments so precious?
Well, the discoveries fundamentally altered our understanding of where life could exist in the solar system. Take Titan, for instance.
Titan is the really big one, right?
Yeah, the Huygens lander actually detached from Cassini and parachuted through Titan's thick, smoggy haze.
I remember seeing those images.
They were incredible. The data it sent back revealed a surface dominated by giant liquid methane and ethane lakes.
Methane lakes. That's just wild to think about.
It is. The chemistry happening on Titan right now is thought to be incredibly similar to the prebiotic conditions present on Earth before life arose.
Wow.
It's essentially an active, planet-sized organic laboratory. And then, perhaps even more shockingly, there's Enceladus.
Yes. I was really hoping we'd get to Enceladus today.
It's a favorite.
What did we learn about those water plumes?
So, Cassini detected massive jets of water ice and vapor erupting from fractures at the moon's south pole.
Just shooting out into space?
Right. And the probe actually altered its flight path to dive directly through those plumes to sample the molecules.
That is so cool.
It's amazing engineering. The analysis strongly suggests that beneath the frozen outer crust of Enceladus, there's a global liquid saltwater ocean.
An entire ocean under the ice.
Exactly. Not only that, but the chemistry points to hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor.
Which is exactly what we have on Earth.
Right, remarkably similar to the vents in Earth's oceans that absolutely teem with life.
So the moons are holding these dynamic water worlds. But the planet itself is holding on to some massive structural mysteries, too.
Oh, definitely.
The sources mention that bizarre giant hexagon at the North Pole. What is actually happening up there?
So it's a localized atmospheric phenomena, essentially a massive, highly structured storm pattern.
But it's shaped like a hexagon.
Yeah, that's the mystery. It lies in its perfect geometric shape and its sheer scale. I mean, it's wide enough to fit several Earths inside.
It's terrifying and amazing.
And even after over a decade of continuous observation, the exact fluid dynamics that maintain such a rigid, six-sided shape in a chaotic gas giant atmosphere, it remains a subject of intense debate.
Nobody really knows for sure.
Not yet.
And beyond the atmosphere, there's currently an ongoing phenomenon in the rings themselves, right? The spoke season.
Yes, currently being tracked by the Hubble Space Telescope.
What are the spokes?
They're these dark, transient smudges that appear to stretch across the rings. Astronomers believe they're related to Saturn's magnetic field interacting with the solar wind, which electrically charges the smallest dust particles in the rings and lifts them out of the ring plane.
But there's a specific timing to this, isn't there?
Yes. What's most relevant to our discussion is their timing. They appear cyclically around the planet's equinoxes, which happen roughly every 15 Earth years.
15 years.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you start to notice a pervasive theme of cycles here.
Cycles of time.
Exactly. Saturn takes about 29.5 Earth years to complete a single orbit around the Sun.
That's a long year.
It is. That physical, relentless 29.5-year cycle, along with the 15-year equinox patterns, it mirrors the human obsession with time, repetition, and boundaries.
Right.
It provides a perfect bridge to the cultural and psychological weight we have assigned to this planet for millennia.
Yeah, because that 29.5-year physical orbit isn't just a number for NASA.
Not at all.
It's exactly what ancient astrologers were tracking when they developed the concept of the Saturn return.
Because of that specific orbital period, it takes roughly 29.5 years for Saturn to return to the exact mathematical position in the sky that it occupied at the moment of your birth.
Your celestial homecoming.
Exactly. And in astrological traditions, this triggers a major psychological milestone. Saturn is often categorized in these texts as the great teacher or the great malefic.
Ruling over time, limitations, the harsh realities of the material world.
Yes, the strict taskmaster.
The sources describe the Saturn return as the final wall. That imagery is incredibly evocative to me.
It's a very vivid metaphor.
How do the texts define what hitting that wall actually entails?
It represents a chronological and developmental checkpoint where evasion is no longer possible.
You can't run away anymore.
Right. The narrative suggests that in your 20s, you can often run from suppressed problems. You can ignore long-term responsibilities or rely on childish coping mechanisms.
We've all been there.
Of course. But the Saturn return is the point where those unresolved issues crystallize. The overarching philosophy is that growth during this window happens strictly through friction.
Friction sounds painful.
It can be. The texts use tarot archetypes to illustrate this specifically. The Tower, which represents sudden foundational disruption.
The Tower card is never a gentle experience.
No, it's not. And they also mention the Six of Swords, representing a difficult but necessary transition toward maturity.
And the advice the sources give for surviving that friction is radical acceptance.
Yes, radical acceptance.
Instead of offering a workaround, the texts insist that you have to greet all of your life, especially the difficult, heavy parts.
You can't just cherry-pick the good stuff.
Why do they warn against trying to control or avoid the pain of this period?
Because attempting to outmaneuver the friction is viewed as a refusal to mature.
You're just stunting your own growth.
Exactly. The Saturnian archetype demands that the old framework give way for the new one to be built. If you fight the demolition process, you simply prolong the collapse and amplify the suffering.
Wow.
The friction isn't framed as a personal punishment, though. It's seen as an archetypal demand for structural integrity in your life.
This concept of difficult, demanding growth is where the sources weave in the Prometheus myth.
Right. The Titan who stole fire.
We all know that baseline story, but the deeper philosophical analysis in our stack points to a much more profound gift. It focuses heavily on the concept of forethought.
What's fascinating here is how the myth describes the state of humanity before that Promethean intervention.
How are we living?
The texts claim humans lived like shapes in dreams, confused and purposeless.
Like we were just sleepwalking through existence.
Basically, they possessed senses but lacked the capacity for true observation or reason. The fire Prometheus delivered was the spark of intellect and consciousness.
Waking up from a dreamlike state sounds beautiful in theory.
It does.
But acquiring wisdom and realizing the weight of your own existence brings a massive burden of responsibility.
It marks the brutal transition from passive, ignorant existence to active, conscious engagement with the world. You're no longer insulated by the dream.
You're subject to the friction of reality.
Exactly. And artists and philosophers have spent centuries trying to capture the sheer weight and ecstasy of that specific awakening.
Which brings us to a really interesting piece of history from our sources.
Yes, a brilliant example from 1911. The Russian composer Alexander Scriabin and his symphony, Prometheus. the poem of fire.
Scriabin didn't just write a symphony, though. He attempted to invent an entirely new sensory experience.
He really did.
He used something called a clavier à lumière, a color organ. How is this instrument supposed to function within a traditional concert hall?
So Scriabin had synesthesia. It's a neurological condition where stimulation of one sensory pathway leads to automatic experiences in a second pathway.
Like hearing colors.
Right. For him, sound and color were intrinsically linked. So he designed the color organ to project specific, massive washes of colored light into the concert hall that corresponded perfectly to the music being played.
That must have been overwhelming.
That was the goal. He even constructed a unique mystic chord to break away from traditional tonal constraints.
A mystic chord.
Yeah, he mapped the note F sharp to a brilliant blue, representing creativity, and the note A to a bright green, representing matter.
But the sources suggest this wasn't just avant-garde theater for him. Scriabin viewed this performance as a literal spiritual tool.
His theological views were completely enmeshed with his compositions. The intention behind Prometheus was to induce a state of absolute transcendent ecstasy in the audience.
Like a forced spiritual awakening.
Exactly. By overwhelming the senses with linked sound and light, he aimed to dissolve the perceived boundaries between the individual and the cosmos. He believed this sensory overload could act as a hidden ladder to the divine.
That ambition ties into a gorgeous concept found later in the esoteric studies of our stack.
Oh, the cosmic hall.
Yes. The texts mention that there is a cosmic hall where everyone wants to go to study.
Right.
It's described as one of the classrooms of this galaxy where the learning never ends. The energy and the information contained in that place are everywhere.
And it will depend on each individual spirit to transform them into wisdom.
Exactly. I love that phrasing.
It perfectly encapsulates the bridge between the Promethean gift and the Saturnian lesson.
How so?
Well, the raw information and the conscious spark are everywhere, but so is the friction. The ultimate responsibility of transforming that chaotic energy into actionable wisdom rests entirely on the individual.
You have to do the work yourself.
You do.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
We're taking a turn.
We are. We're going to examine the third section of our source stack, which plunges into modern esoteric internet lore, specifically surrounding the digital entity known as Saturn feeds and its vast web of conspiracy theories.
Right. Now, before we delve into this material, we must issue a strict and absolute disclaimer.
Yes, very important.
We are about to explore highly complex, culturally and politically charged internet mythos found in the provided texts. We want to make it abundantly clear to you, the listener, that we are not endorsing, validating, or supporting any of these viewpoints.
We are not taking sides.
Exactly. We are simply reporting impartially on the fascinating, albeit bizarre, ideas contained in the original source material.
Just to understand how these ancient archetypes are being remixed and weaponized in the digital age.
Correct.
So, with our Objective Explorer hats firmly on, the Saturn feeds lore takes everything we just unpacked, the physical planet, the hexagonal storm, the rings, the mythological heaviness of time and limitation, and it twists it into a narrative of cosmic horror.
It really is like a sci-fi horror script.
Yeah. In this mythos, Saturn isn't a passive celestial body. It's categorized as a black cube or a hypersingularity engine.
Right.
How does this engine supposedly operate?
The core tenet of the lore is that this engine requires fuel, and it feeds specifically on human repetition, societal cycles, and psychological fear.
It feeds on us.
Yes. The narrative posits that what we perceive as linear time is actually a manufactured construct, a time trap.
A time trap.
And this trap is allegedly designed to process the human experience into a dense, consumable form of energy that powers the black cube.
And the texts claim this cosmic engine isn't just operating out in space, it has physical earthly anchors.
Terrestrial nodes.
Right. The lore lists these terrestrial nodes as major global centers, specifically the finance hubs in London and New York City and the Kaaba in Mecca.
Right.
Why do the creators of this lore point to these specific locations?
They focus heavily on the architectural geometry of these sites. They interpret cubic and hexagonal structures not as human design, but as protection runes or resonant nodes.
Like physical antennas?
Exactly. According to the mythos, these locations act as massive tuning forks. By centralizing global finance and religious pilgrimage, these nodes supposedly tune the human population to Saturn's restrictive frequency.
Locking humanity into endless loops.
Loops of debt, obligation, ritualistic repetition, all to generate the friction the engine feeds on.
The mechanics of how this turning works delve deep into vibrational frequencies. The lore suggests that the time trap operates specifically at the 440 Hz standard.
Yeah, so the 440 hertz frequency became the international standard for musical pitch in the 20th century.
It's what standard tuning is based on.
Right. However, in esoteric circles, this specific frequency is often framed as inherently dissonant and unnatural.
Okay.
The Saturn feeds narrative adopts this view, claiming that constant exposure to 440 hertz through modern media generates the inner resentment and low-level psychological friction that the Saturnian engine harvests.
But the lore offers an escape hatch, built around the 432 Hz frequency.
Yes, the alternative frequency.
The texts claim that if you are in a deep state of relaxation called theta sleep, you can hear the subterranean choir singing at 432 Hz.
It's very specific.
What exactly is theta sleep, and where is this choir supposed to be?
So theta sleep refers to a brainwave state typically associated with deep meditation, REM sleep, or the hypnagogic state just before falling asleep.
That twilight zone of sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In the lore, achieving this state allows an individual to bypass the 440 hertz static of the time trap.
And tune into the choir.
Right. The subterranean choir they hear is allegedly broadcasting from Agartha.
Agartha.
Yeah, in various 19th century occult traditions, Agartha is a legendary utopian kingdom located in the hollow core of the earth.
And the lore connects Agartha to something called the inner sun and a substance called vril.
The inner sun isn't described as a physical star, though. It's rather a manifestation of spiritual plasma, or pure consciousness light, which they call vril.
Vril energy.
Right. This energy is framed as the absolute, liberating antithesis of Saturn's entropic, fear-based harvesting.
This is where the lore folds in some incredibly bizarre alternate history.
It takes a big leap here.
The sources highlight the claim that in 1939, the Nazis launched an expedition to Antarctica. But in the context of this mythos, they weren't exploring. They were actively searching for the entrance to Agartha.
The narrative suggests that the expedition was an occult attempt to harness vril and merge with the inner sun to escape the Saturnian trap.
And to explain why no one has found this entrance since then?
The modern lore points to the strict environmental treaties and no-fly zones over parts of Antarctica.
They think those are a cover-up.
Right. They don't view these as geopolitical agreements. They view them as massive physical protection runes guarding the entrance to Agartha from the unawakened masses.
It is a massive, dizzying synthesis of esotericism, Germanic mythology, and modern societal anxiety.
It really is a lot to process.
But the wildest part of the Saturn Feeds text is how this mythology manifests digitally. The sources detail phenomena involving invalid YouTube links, specifically URLs ending in the string Google user content 0.
Yes, the metadata.
How do believers of this lore interpret a broken link?
Well, they refuse to accept that these are simply deleted videos or server errors. In their framework, the 0 at the end of the URL represents the singularity of the Saturnian engine.
The 0 is the black cube.
Exactly. They see it as the exact digital coordinate where human data and attention are consumed by the engine.
They treat these metadata glitches as digital echoes of the engine hiding the truth from the algorithm.
It's a very modern paranoia.
The sources even mention that followers use metadata extraction tools as a modern form of divination.
Right.
They are literally scrying through the internet's architecture to find the protection runes.
This raises an important question, though.
What's that?
Why do these incredibly complex esoteric narratives continually emerge? When you analyze the human behavior beneath the conspiracy, you see a profound need to map the boundaries of reality.
Humans just need to make sense of things.
Exactly. Whether it was ancient agricultural societies using the movement of the planets to explain famine and wealth, or modern internet users looking at broken YouTube metadata to explain feelings of societal alienation and the crushing weight of global capitalism.
The underlying impulse is identical.
It is. Humans will use whatever technology or conceptual framework they have available to make sense of the restrictive, often painful forces shaping their lives.
So what does this all mean? We've covered everything from NASA probes diving into methane clouds, to the ancient psychological milestones of time, to the deepest, strangest corners of YouTube metadata conspiracies.
If we synthesize this entire deep dive, a unifying theme emerges regarding how we interact with limits.
Limits and boundaries.
Right. Whether you're observing the literal 29.5-year physical orbit of a massive gas giant studied by the Cassini probe,
Or you're facing the grueling psychological milestone of the Saturn Return that forces personal maturity.
Or you're tumbling down a modern digital mythos about escaping a hypersingularity engine. Saturn represents the ultimate boundary. It's the inescapable friction of existence.
You can't avoid it.
No. But as the Promethean myth and the concept of the cosmic hull teach us, that friction is the prerequisite for forethought.
You have to push against something to grow.
Exactly. You cannot wake up, and you cannot transform raw energy into true wisdom without first hitting the wall.
Thank you so much for coming on this incredible, winding journey with us today. We really hope you found some insight in this stack of sources.
To close our deep dive today, I want to leave you with one final thought drawn from the ancient Near Eastern alchemical texts in our sources.
The alchemists had a take on Saturn, too.
They did. In medieval alchemy, Saturn was known as the son of night. It was heavily associated with the basest, heaviest of metals, black lead.
Lead.
Right. But the ultimate, closely guarded secret of the alchemists was this. Internally, that dense black lead was good gold. It just needed its impurities burned away.
It already had the gold inside.
Exactly. The lead didn't need to be destroyed. It needed to be transformed through pressure and heat. So I leave you with this to mull over. What heavy, restrictive, frustrating Saturnian lead in your own life right now might actually be hiding the exact gold you need to transform your reality?